My name is Marina Gomberg, and I'm the Director of Development and Marketing for the Utah Pride Center here in Salt Lake City.
All right. And what kind of stuff do you do like on a daily basis? Like, what's your day look like?
Here at the Utah Pride Center, well, being in Utah, we have a need to really try to raise funds to support. I mean, we're Utah's only LGBT community center that serves the entire state, and because there is such a huge dominant culture here, people of the LDS faith that aren't necessarily very supportive of our efforts. We have to be really strategic and thoughtful about our fundraising, as I'm sure every nonprofit has to be. But we have, and so we do a lot of different kinds of events to raise funds, and any sort of typical fundraising, like direct mail appeals and e-blasts and things like that. And I'll organize and do all of that. In addition to obviously helping with the Pride Festival, which is a program of the Utah Pride Center, and it's the second largest festival, outdoor festival in the state of Utah, which is pretty cool. And so working on that takes, we spend a lot of time every year, probably between 9 and solidly for 6 months planning that and organizing that and getting sponsorships. But it's interesting, as time goes on, we see more and more people come to that event, more and more corporations, national corporations and local businesses alike sponsoring and feeling comfortable in coming out as supporting the LGBTQ community, which is pretty cool. On a daily basis, and I'm kind of a sap anyway, but on a daily basis, I feel like I just am so touched by people's generosity, as we've seen Prop 8 stuff take off and the economy go down, just expletive. It's interesting to see people who come into my office, and I assume that they're going to talk about maybe not donating as much or having to stop their donations or whatever, and they increase their donations, and people, organizations who have sponsored events in the past and want to sponsor now, they realize the need and they're increasing their giving. And so on a daily basis here, I usually am pretty touched, maybe shed a tear, and just try to open up the possibilities for people to show their support for our community, because so many people are coming out as supporters, and so I just facilitate that process pretty much.
Can you talk about the connection between the Mormon Church and Utah and Prop 8 and the queer community?
Yeah, it was Prop 8 and the LDS Church in Utah and California. I don't know that any of us know really how that was all intertwined, and I think that the church itself had some influence financially and with the amount of time that they spent, and people wonder if they've underreported the amount of time. But what we did see was that they were clear about their stance, and like any leaders of a church, there are people who are devout, will listen, and we saw action on the part of the people here in Utah. Phone trees and calling their family members in California and donating money. And so there was a huge part of the money that went to fund Prop 8 that came from Utah. And so then likewise, I assume there was probably, as a result, a lot of money for no on Prop 8 that came from Utah. We have Bruce Bastian, who's a huge supporter of the LGBTQ community, who I believe donated $1 million. And I think that there's investigations of the church maybe having some separate organization that they funded to do the work of Yes on Prop 8. And I think that there are people who are trying to investigate the ties between them. What we know for sure is that on a local level, and I can't speak to what happens in California. We saw that Prop 8 didn't pass, obviously, but what we know about the church and GLBT people here in Utah is that the effect is really negative. I mean, when kids, I grew up Jewish in Utah, which is obviously not typical. And when somebody would call me a dirty Jew growing up, I could go home and my dad would say, Marina, Jewish people are a beautiful people and they've contributed to society in this way and that way. And we would go to synagogue together and there was this togetherness, like at least I had my family. gay and lesbian youth oftentimes don't have that. It's much more rare that they come out to a parent who's already gay or who also identifies as gay or lesbian, and so it's a very different feeling. And we see that when the dominant culture is so oppressive that way and very they really hold to strict and rigid gender roles that being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender obviously don't. And so we see it cause a lot of strife. We see, gays and lesbians getting married really young because that's what they're told to do anyway. And so they get married and maybe even have kids and then end up, later in life being able to love who they are and can come out. But wouldn't it be easier if they could have just come out earlier in life, right? And we see kids. We've got a really high suicide rate here in Utah, and the rate of or the number of homeless youth that identify as LGBTQ is upwards of 42%. I think it's astronomical, and these kids are getting kicked out because of their sexuality or the way that they want to express their gender or their gender identity, and it's just and I see that. A lot of times being very connected to the dominant faith here, and so it's hard. I think that connection is really clear and really strong, and I hope that it can become one where there's a greater level of understanding. I think if the church would come to a place where they would hear the result of their sentiments and what they're doing to people, to human beings, regardless of their sexuality, I would hope that maybe they would put some of that effort into, trying to keep kids from wanting to die or keep parents from wanting to kick out their kids. I can't imagine that's an easy place to be either, to have to kick out your kid because of what your religion says.